How did JJ McCarthy look on the all-22? What's the deal with Kevin O'Connell's play calling? And why are the Vikings being really dumb with Eric Wilson despite his great year? We're going to talk about all that and more here with Luke Braun on X's and SKOLs.
X's and SKOLs with Tyler Forness and Luke Braun. Dissecting the all-22 for your Minnesota Vikings.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of X's and SKOLs. I'm your host, Tyler Forness, and with me, as always, producer Dave in the bottom right corner, Odie down to my left, and to my actual left on the screen is Luke Braun. How are you doing, sir?
Probably not as good as Odie. I'm going to guess he's chilling, vibing.
Oh, he's vibing big time. He is in his bed. No toy this time. That is downstairs in the kennel with marzipan. But we are just having a good time, and well, we're having a better time than the Minnesota Vikings, who are now 4-5. And the game on Sunday, my best way to describe it was the Vikings did everything they could to not win that football game, and it came back to make sure that they didn't win the football game. I think we should start here with the A topic, JJ McCarthy. Everybody wants to talk about McCarthy. Everybody wants to, and you and I have talked about this a lot offline. They want to put some kind of clarification of what he is right now instead of just understanding that he is kind of an amoeba and we really don't know what he is yet. He's still trying to figure out how to be an NFL quarterback because he's only had 4 starts in the National Football League, but everybody wants to contextualize every single thing and say that, oh, he's going to be bad. And it's, I don't think that's
everyone
fair.
wants to, it's like a trajectory. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? Jeremiah Searles. That's like, can we make it so every play is not a referendum on somebody's career when they in their first year? I think that's such a bar. Like, and I'm not just saying that because he's doing poorly, right? Like I said the same thing about Caleb Williams, who I want to do poorly because I'm a Vikings fan. That like his whole first year, he got that same treatment. And I think for similar reasons, both guys just have expectations that were unfair to them. Where, Caleb walked into the league and everybody crowned him immediately, and he was supposed to be Mahomes basically right off the bat. And any struggle at all shatters that illusion. And suddenly people have to react to that. And now they're reacting to this guy isn't as good as I thought. And it turns into, and therefore he's a bust. They picked the wrong guy. Look at what Jaden Daniels is doing. And it all turns transactional. And I can't stand how much the football community has to turn their discussion of a player into a transaction. It can never just be, here's what JJ McCarthy did well, did poorly, what he needs to improve on, what we want to see, what are the nature of this play, the nature of that play. It's always, should they have drafted someone else? Should they have kept Sam Darnold? It always has to be put in the context of a transaction. And like, I think that just puts the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that way. And I'll feel that way when, we talked about Justin Jefferson in the context of and lull Jalen Reagor in the Eagles, right? Like, no, we just talk about the guy. And so we can do that here today and what he's doing. But I also think about it like with somebody like Caleb or any of those other 2024 QBs, or shoot, Jackson Dart, Cam Moore, anybody young, right? How many games do you want to see? Take JJ McCarthy out of the equation. How many games do you want to see from like Cam Ward before you feel like what his NFL career will be? Couple years, that's 34, right? Call it 30 games, and we've seen 4. And I think he gets treated a little bit like we've seen 26 because there have been 26 games played since they drafted him, and he was hurt for a lot of that. So I think people take his 4th game and treat it like it's his 26th, and that is probably not something anybody intends to do. I don't think anybody's like, yeah, and we should do that. And holding a high ankle sprain off of I'll say semi-hip drop tackle, like against him is not fair, right? But in the same way that like Caleb got those expectations coming in because he was so crowned with the golden boy, McCarthy has gotten these expectations because the Vikings were 14-3 last year. Sam Darnold's doing great. And that transactional thing gets in everyone's head and makes everybody compare McCarthy to stuff we shouldn't be comparing him to. You shouldn't compare this year to last year. I've said that the whole way, that's not going to be the same, and you shouldn't expect it to be the same. And yet, as he does not meet that expectation, I think it puts him in a spot where a young QB mistake isn't given the grace that a young QB mistake should be given. You're going, but it's game 26 for him. What do you mean? This is year 2. He shouldn't be making that mistake. Like, no, it isn't. It's game 4. And honestly, it's year 1. And I think we can be disappointed that it's year 1 for sure. Because I thought it should be year like 1.5. I thought he should be further ahead than this, but I overestimated how much he could develop while injured. All right, my bad.
And that's not our fault. It's because of what they said coming out of the building. They talked
For
about
sure.
how he was so involved in meeting rooms. They talked about how he was involved in defensive meetings. They talked about the VR aspect. Like, they set the expectation. We didn't set it ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, we can point to that, Dallas Turner's the third starter, right? We can point to that a lot. They set expectations of Brian Asamoah being like a breakout player and then benched him. Like they've done that a lot. And I think when they gas up their players, we just have to realize that this regime, it's meaningless. Which is not great because now there can be no positive things said in the media about your players that you trust. You can never, ever have a positive quote anymore because we don't trust the ones, even if you do mean it. And we kind of just have to let the film be the film. But that's, I guess, what I want anyways, is to just let the film be the film. Let a young quarterback come through and show those blemishes and understand that the Vikings went into this understanding this. They did not go into this season expecting to be 14-3. And they probably let Sam Darnold go to Seattle and went, that team's probably going to be pretty good now. They probably understood that entirely when they made this decision. I would not say that they were caught off guard. And if they were, then, shame on them.
Absolutely shame on them if that was the case. I want to recommend that everybody go and watch Luke's Patreon video on JJ McCarthy when you're done here. Patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL.
You got 2 hours.
Yeah, well, it's going to be incredibly in-depth, and it's going to show you the stuff that we can't on here because Patreon's a little bit different than YouTube for some of the all-22 stuff. But we're going to talk about it. And I think the first thing I want to talk about, Luke, is there is a significant difference with JJ McCarthy on so-called scripted plays versus non-scripted plays. And I think that's a poor characterization of what we're seeing from JJ McCarthy, because while they may be scripted plays, I liken JJ McCarthy to a 12-year-old at an all-night LAN party. You go there and you've only had like one Mountain Dew, but by the time it's 4 a.m., you've had a 12-pack and you're bouncing off the walls.
Yeah,
and that's kind of
flying.
That's kind of what we see with JJ McCarthy, right? He's calm, cool, collected early on. He's not really that frantic, but then as the game goes on, it's almost like he gets himself too amped up. He's got too much caffeine in his blood and everything just goes wonky. I don't think that's a scripted plays thing. I think that's a human thing. And I'm curious your thoughts about how you fix that, because we've seen when the mechanics all work together and you have the whole package, what he can do. And it's a really, really bright future. The problem is there's zero consistency with us being able to see that. You can look at the Jalen Naylor throw that ended up going for 62 yards. Just perfect execution, perfect rhythm. Everything about it was great. But you don't get to see that replicated very often. And I'm curious your thoughts about how to find that consistency with him.
That's an emotional question, right? Every 8 months or so, I go back and read that Matt Waldman piece, that deny emotion and you only see a fraction of the game. That is an emotional thing. And I think the emotions got away from him, which is why he fell apart so much in the back half. I know now he's got his little hand hurty thing, and I will be making an obnoxious bit out of saying that he's totally exonerated because his hand was hurt. But what led to the problems at the end, I don't think you can chalk up to hurty hand. I think you have to look elsewhere. And you can see kind of extra movement with his feet, extra hitches he didn't need, and then just putting more oomph into passes that didn't need it, and then you sail them high or they go far or whatever. Every time he can just calmly execute a throwing motion the way that he's been practicing how to execute a throwing motion, that's where you'll find the highlights, and you'll find the lowlights when he's trying to force the issue. And to me, he forced the issue so much because the vibe of the game, you're in a comeback situation and all that, I think just got into his head. And to manage that, if you want to think, put yourself in the position of Josh McCown or Kevin O'Connell, the challenge has to be managing that and getting, a young kid to calm down in a big scenario, especially under the lights. And hey, on Monday Night Football, he played great in that situation, right? Last week against the Lions in a hostile environment, he played pretty well in that situation. So like, it's not that he's, bad when you're in tough spots or anything like that. Not globally across the 4 games that we've played, but he was bad that time. And so you got to put that kind of in your wallet and take it. But with the scripted plays, I want to interrogate that idea a little bit. Cause like, what is a scripted play to you? Like, let me know in the chat. Mm-hmm. What does a scripted play mean to you? Does it mean that it's all memorized? Because that's not how, like, you don't have a list of 15 plays in the first 10. We're going to do this. Second thing we're going to do. Because if you get into a 2nd and 7 and you're on the scripted play that's only supposed to go 4 yards because it was supposed to be a 1st and 10 by then, like, that's not how this goes, right? It's just that you usually start the game with stuff you've done more in practice. And so you're going to be a little bit cleaner and tighter at executing that. But so is the defense. And the first couple of drives are always going to be a feeling out period of 2 boxers circling each other and throwing light jabs, seeing what these guys brought to the table. And then after the first 2 drives is usually where you start to see teams change stuff and make adjustments and fix stuff up, right? But when I hear he's only good at scripted plays, I'm a little worried that we're thinking, they went bubble screen, tunnel screen, slant flat, and called a bunch of easy stuff. But then when the game went on and you had a 3rd and 8 and you had to call a real play, you didn't do it. That's not what is happening here. And I also think that, like, he's had plenty of good plays in 4th quarters. Like, we spent like 6 weeks arguing about his only good quarter, which was a 4th quarter. So I don't think you can use the scripted plays thing and get away with it and say that's the theme of JJ McCarthy. I think it's just the way that it's gone the last couple. And rather, what I've seen the last couple is a player that starts the game calm and ends the game very uncalm. And I don't think that has anything to do with the scriptedness of the plays, though. Again, I think that's an emotional issue, and it's a part of managing all the personalities in a locker room. That's a fundamental role of coaching.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and talk about the whole 9 persona. That is what it is. It's either going to be really cool or Russell Wilson like cringe. His career is going to determine which end of the spectrum that's on. But I do think that idea...
It's fun when he wins, and it's really cringe when he loses. He's got to shut up, I think. But like nobody tells you anything in the media for this reason, right? Like, he's going to have one quote that's slightly off color, and now it becomes his whole personality and like characterizes a win or a loss. And it's like, well, that's why he's the next 900 times you ask him a question, he's going to give you a platitude that makes his pressers probably not worth watching. So good job, everybody.
Yeah, and let me tell you, somebody watches all the pressers. I want to see more of that. Too Evil, thank you for the super chat. We're gonna get to the Kevin O'Connell play calling stuff. Whoa. So I promise that we're gonna have that conversation, but we're gonna stay with McCarthy for right now. So, to me, the whole idea with the 9 persona is it's almost like when Popeye eats spinach and he just kind of takes over and then goes and saves olive oil. It's, hey, I need that next level. I'm going to get myself in the zone and I'm going to elevate this team and be able to get us that game winning drive. I don't really see it as anything else. It's just something fun for the guys in the locker room. And then of course everybody needs to make fun of it. Other social media of NFL teams are making fun of 9 already. It did not take very long.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a thought. Don't be on social media. After last year, I kind of did a big detox of social media, which included, deleting Twitter, deleting Facebook, clearing out all of my history on Reddit. Never been on Instagram, never been on TikTok. And I'm so glad that there is now no footprint of the cringe ass stuff I was saying when I was 22. Yeah, I'm sorry, none of you were cool at 22. He's just another cringe Zoomer. It is what it is. That's how they make them nowadays. That guy probably knows what a deep lore of Skibidi Toilet. All right, like he has seen everything on Gary's Mod.
Yep. When I was 22, I was spending 90 hours a week in a Buffalo Wild Wings opening up stores in South Dakota. Nobody wants to hang out with that guy again. But I do think the idea of what this whole 9 persona is really plays into some of this what we're talking about, being able to control those emotions, because when he's under control, it looks really good. We see a lot of good stuff with like between the ears. We see him rotating through progressions. I saw one play where he was about to go to the check down, but he saw Malachi Starks jump it from depth. So it was like 15 yards, but it would have probably been an instant tackle. Instead, he goes and runs for 5 yards. Like little things like that are not things that you would expect a 22-year-old with 4 starts to do on a football field. But it's being able to marry some of this really good process stuff with keeping your feet calm and having your feet match the eyes and match the arm. He's not doing that with any kind of consistency. And I think one of the big frustrations, especially when you look at the box score, 20 of 42, they still average 6 yards a play on offense, which is bonkers when you think about it, considering how inaccurate he was as a quarterback. How do we get to a point where he can eliminate some of those overthrows, where he can marry the feet to the eyes and be able to throw a little better on the run? Because we've seen him do it, and we've seen him do it at a high level.
Right. It's a matter
There's
of
zero
consistency.
consistency. Like,
Yeah.
and to me, consistency is always going to be the most difficult thing for a quarterback. All these quarterbacks can do the great throws. All these quarterbacks can read a full field progression. It's being able to do
They can all do it once.
Yeah. Being able to do it 7 times in a drive, being able to do it 20 times in a game. Those are the things that separate the great quarterbacks from the ones who don't make it as starters. How do we find a form of consistency within the context of this season? Because I think long term, there's a much different path to getting there. But we're not talking about a macro picture. We're talking about the next 9 games. And while they're trying to fix this stuff, they're trying to game plan. They're trying to win football games by installing those game plans. Doesn't leave a lot of time for the little things.
Right. And that's why I kind of caution it. Like, you're not going to see hip rotation get better this year, right? Like, that has gotten to the point that it has gotten to. And that's going to be something that he works on, and hopefully comes back in camp next year and it's a little bit chilled out, right? And you'll see better accuracy as he learns and grows up.
Yeah.
I would say, again, it's about consistency. Like, for me, this was a big lesson I learned from some of the sort of late round quarterbacks that got people all whooped up in the last couple drafts, like the Spencer Rattler, like Joe Milton, right? And you'll see, one really cool play from Joe Milton, and he throws this big howitzer 70 yards down the field, and you're going, whoa, that would be a game changer if you had a quarterback that could throw a 70-yard bomb. I mean, that would change the whole texture of your off. And then you realize that you've only ever seen that one play, and you've seen that play over and over and over, but you've never seen a different example of it. And that kind of led me to that realization. Everybody can do it once. If you get to consideration in the NFL, you can of course do it once. You have shown at least the ability to do it, but who can do it for 60 minutes is what decides Super Bowls and really separates the men from the boys in this league. And I'm not even just talking about JJ McCarthy. That separates Jordan Love out. That separates Caleb Williams out. Sometimes that separates Jared Goff out. So that separates MVP candidates out sometimes. But the ones who can do it consistently all day long, that to me, I hear like Stafford, right? Can do that all day long. I think Lamar goes in that category. I think Josh Allen goes in that category for the most part. Sometimes he loses it, but not enough to take it out. That's what separates the men from the boys. If you can get consistent, then you take that huge leap. For McCarthy, you need to be a lot more consistent just to get into the conversation of being an NFL starter and how good an NFL starter should be. And how to do that comes down to keeping your emotions under control, and that will then translate to the rest of your body. Because when you get tired, when you get amped, when you're no longer in a like mentally centered place, your habits show. This is like, I think of like a hot weather game, right? Because it's always hot where I live. And when you're hot, tired, sweaty, you suddenly will play exactly how you practiced all week, because everything you've built that is a habit is what comes out when you're not actively regulating it. So when mental fatigue sets in and physical fatigue sets in, your habits show. Well, McCarthy still has these habits. They haven't broken yet. And hey, he hasn't worked on it very long, right? He didn't really have his rookie offseason because of the draft stuff. He didn't really have last offseason because he was still rehabbing that injury. And he's had however many weeks of practice in 2 camps to work on that stuff. And he hasn't broken those habits yet. Break those habits, and now it won't matter if you get too amped up. But for now, you have to keep that under control. Find your centered persona and, find a way. And this is what, like, the whole 9 thing, when he said that, he said, I got to find when to put 9 away and when to just be JJ, when to just be a human, be a regular person. And I think that's probably a good lesson. But yeah, I think we've learned a little bit about the media, JJ, that they will basically take anything you say that has an ounce of color in it whatsoever is going to become the tweet fodder du jour of whatever team you just lost to.
It's going to be the next Colin Cowherd punchline when he says you stink again, and he was right about Sam Darnold 7 years later. That's just the reality of the business.
I don't need to hear from Colin Cowherd anymore. I think we as a society have evolved past the need for shock jocks that don't actually seriously care about educating their audiences.
It's very true. But then again, Pat McAfee's still platformed everywhere, so who knows at this point.
We don't need to hear from him anymore either.
No. Before we kind of move on to some of the other discussions, I want to ask you about some of the mental stuff with JJ McCarthy, because I saw a lot of really good stuff. And I think as we start transitioning over to some of this Kevin O'Connell play calling stuff, because I think you raised some really interesting points with me after I spent a lot of time talking about it on Monday, to where it makes things a little bit more of a different conversation. The mental side with McCarthy. How do you feel so far through 4 games about how he's doing mentally, the strides that we've seen from the first 2 games into the last 2? And especially because we're still trying to figure out who's really at fault for these false starts. Where are you at with him on a mental perspective from everything that we can understand and see?
That's such an umbrella term. I can probably say I'm really happy. I'm really happy with most of the mental stuff, while still acknowledging what happens wrong with the false starts and what happens with the emotional side of your mental game, right? But in terms of what he reads pre-snap, he, for the most part, is correct. And that is improvement in the Chicago game right away. The first couple of snaps of that game, like his very first 3 snaps of his career, he made 2 bad can decisions. He canned into a play that didn't work, and he shouldn't have done that against that front. I don't know what he was canning out of, so maybe it was just a small protection adjustment or something. But like, he made bad can decisions. In each game, that has become less and less and less common, but he's not making fewer can decisions. He's just doing it right. And I think what he sees pre-snap, I just did a Patreon video about the false starts, right? And the one where he says Oscar, Oscar, and 2 guys jump. Well, he's trying to flip the play there, and forgetting that it caused a false start for a second, the decision to flip the play is really cool. You have a motion with TJ Hawkinson. He's going from one side to the other, so it's changing the strength of the formation. They had, from what I think, a run to the strong side called that then Hawkinson motions and it becomes a weak side run. And in that, you rotate the Ravens respond to that by rotating the safety, so they have an extra body on the strong side no matter what. Well, now you're running into that extra body again. So McCarthy flips the play and says, no, I want to run away from where you just rotated the safety. And that's probably what the instruction he got on the sideline. And so therefore he reads that properly. Young quarterbacks are not always given the leeway to do that, to even attempt it. And the fact that he's doing that, and he's doing that for the right reasons. When I see safety rotation and I hear Oscar, Oscar, I go, okay, he gets it. He gets what he's supposed to be doing. And I think the characterization of this guy spent a year in the classroom doing nothing but memorizing, working on nothing physically, working on nothing temporally, right? Not getting a sense for timing or a 6th sense for spacing, and not working on his mechanics at all, but just memorizing. You can tell. he knows, okay, safety rotation means on, 18 support, I gotta Oscar it. He knows that.
Oscar just means opposite, right?
Oscar means flip the play. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm the man play. How much freedom does JJ have to audible? So most plays, and I don't think O'Connell should do it as much as he does, but he does it basically every time, have a can in it. So he will call a play and then a second backup play. And so whenever he goes can, he's going to the second backup play based on something that he sees in the pre-snap alignment. Usually it's, if it's a stacked box, you will check out of a run to a pass. Or if it's, middle of field is open, your can play might be a post route that attacks that. So you can into that. It's those kinds of decisions that you make. And then they also have Oscar, which flips the play. And a couple of things that can mess with the snap cadence that can go into turbo or something like that. What you don't necessarily see in any of these McVay things, because so many of these plays are very meticulously timed and spaced, they don't really want to have like your Madden style hot routes. Like you don't even see like Stafford doing that, right? Like you don't see even like veterans doing that. O'Connell never did that with anybody, not Kirk, not Darnold, nobody. Because it just doesn't really jive with the way that these plays tend to be constructed. But those are the main levers that he has: is go to the backup play, flip the play, and then you'll have post snap reads too that you can, after the snap, you can alert, and this can become a go ball if you like the matchup, right? Even though this was really supposed to be a drive concept, it can become a go ball if you like it, or it can become a bubble screen if you like the pre-snap matchup, but really it's just a run play with a fake bubble. Those are all the things that McCarthy is dealing with, and having him deal with all of that pre-snap, and all the different code words. I mean, do you want me to pull up the playbook and start reading what these plays are like, so that you can get a sense for this 22-year-old coming out and trying to do all this under the lights on Monday Night Football in his very first game, and making mistakes on that is going to be part of the growth process. It's good. Like it is, and it is expected for him to show up at 22 and not screw any of this up. Would be the most insane thing I've ever seen. But he has all that stuff down from a memorization and mental standpoint. So I love the way that he looks at things mentally. But then when it's time to place the ball to Jalen Naylor going across the field, that's when you get it behind him, above him. Wasn't quite timed out right? He rushes the read a little bit too much, right? Pressure's coming at him and he's not used to handling that. He's got to learn all that. Those are things that can come with nothing but experience, nothing but on-field experience. Sitting in a classroom, you will not ever get to work on that stuff. And you can just tell. You can just tell what comes with experience and what doesn't, what can come with, a redshirt year functionally. And he's good at the redshirt stuff and he's not good at the experience stuff. And yeah, makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Before we kind of move on to the play calling thing, because the canning, I think, is a really important aspect of this whole conversation. We got 91 people watching live right now. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button. And then when you're done, go check out all of Luke Braun's work on Locked On Vikings and patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. One thing that's really interesting about this whole Kevin O'Connell play calling discussion, which I sent you the press conference, he talked for about 2.5 minutes about the play calling. The question about the play calling was specifically about the third and shorts. And Kevin O'Connell gave a really good synopsis about everything that a head coach thinks about, or a play caller, excuse me, when you're going through that process of how to call plays. And I think there's two conversations to be had here. One, is he making some of these correct play calls in timely situations, and how he goes about his process? And two, I think there's a deeper question, which you kind of brought up to me. Is he just philosophically too stubborn? Not just calling run and pass plays, because I think that's not granular enough. That's just looking at a box score and seeing, oh, they threw it 48 times with a first-year starting quarterback and only had 13 designed run plays. Like, that's not how that works. But some of the nuances of how you talked about the JJ McCarthy mental stuff, where he is responsible to can everything at the line of scrimmage. He's responsible to time everything. I want to start with that point. Like, is Kevin O'Connell doing the right thing with some of his schematic stuff to set his players up for success? Because I talk a lot about execution. when you watch these plays, the first 3rd and short that they had this year was a throw to Adam Thielen, and he dropped it. Like that is what when I talk execution, if you drop the ball, dog, that's not on the play caller. That's on you for being bad. But
and that was O'Connell called that one out specifically, right?
Mm-hmm. And he called out the No, I did. He called out specifically the 3rd and 1 rail route to Jalen Naylor, and then they called it on a slot fade against the Ravens this past weekend, and they hit it the second time around. That's where the execution comes into play, because if you have the throw, you got to be able to hit it. And McCarthy did the second time, even though he didn't the first. So walk me through some of the things that you are frustrated with when it comes to the play calling element, not just looking at run versus pass, but there's more intricacies.
Yeah. Anytime. Cause like I will not have run pass ratio discourse on Kevin O'Connell after enduring years and years of people begging Mike Zimmer to pass more. And now this guy's passing more, and you're like, wait, no, you just want the plays to work. So do I.
That's exactly it.
So do they. But you probably aren't on the right track when you're asking, well, no, it's got to be actually, 50% run was too much. So maybe let's go to like 30% run. No, that's not enough. It's too much passing. Let's go to 35% run. You're totally missing the forest for the trees. And I have a simple follow-up question to anybody whose main thing about KOC right now is that he passes too much. What passes? You want him to run more? Which runs? Which ones? I mean, you don't push the run button on the sideline. Which runs?
The ones that work, Luke. I just want the ones that work.
Run which plays? Which run plays? Which pass plays? Which pass plays don't you want him to call anymore? I think there are answers to this, but if you're not thinking that way, then we can't have a productive conversation.
I think the big thing from the fan base, Luke, is if it's 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 1, they want to run the football and get the first down. And that's the only thing that they're thinking about in those situations, which is the impetus of the entire discussion that I had on Monday's show, and why Will Raggets asked the question at today's presser, because it's the 3rd and short. And it all boils down to, do you want to run the ball and get the first down? Or you have Justin Jefferson one-on-one. Take the shot. That's where that conversation comes into play. But what you and I talked about earlier offline was a much bigger picture conversation. And that, I think, needs to be focused on a little bit too.
Yeah. Like when it comes to play calling, you're looking for opportunities, right? And I think we need to be willing to listen to stuff like, well, I know it was 3rd and 1, but we wanted a one-on-one with Justin Jefferson. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves that if Justin Jefferson comes down with that on the 5-yard line and it's an explosive, we're going, sweet, what an aggressive play call. We love that play call if it works. If Justin Jefferson gets his feet tangled and it's an interception, which is the worst case scenario there, blaming the play call to me is completely asinine. You can blame McCarthy for the ball placement. I think you could have done that a little safer. You can blame, of course, Jefferson for falling over when he was trying to put a little bit of heat into Marlon Humphrey and he loses his feet because he's not that kind of physical receiver. I'm putting most of the blame on that. But the play call itself, again, you're just doing it results based. You're blaming the coin for calling heads when it came up tails and saying, stupid coin, this thing's rigged. I mean, it's like losing a Monopoly and saying the dice are loaded. Like, think for 2 more seconds. So here's what I'll say in the grand scheme of things and what my issue has been generally. So these play calls will have a lot of tags on them. So I did pull up some plays. So I'm gonna do this. So let's say bundle left fax, Alaska can run or pass. So Alaska is a jet sweep. Spirit and Alaska are jet sweeps. This is from an NFL playbook that's not the Vikings, but a very similar one to the Vikings. And it's from a few years ago, so don't worry, I'm not leaking anything. All these words have probably changed 3 times since this playbook was printed, so we can just use it as a nice, easy example, right? So bundle left fax Alaska can run or pass. He has to alert if the linebackers slide to can from a run into a pass that turns into a play pass with a jet sweep angle. Are you guys with me yet, by the way? If you're over 22, you should have this down, right? It's super easy. You guys still with me? Good. Yeah, you're with me. All right. This isn't too complicated yet. So if you can get everybody in the right snap count, and you can make sure that you've canned run to pass properly if you get the linebacker slide with that motion that you were getting with the jet sweep. Then you can also make sure that you have the snap count right. But the snap counts have to be pretty important as well. And if you want to tag it with another motion, you can have, let's say, a counter motion from the tight end. A counter motion is the one where he goes across the center and then back. It's actually different each play. Sometimes he goes to the same side guard, the opposite side guard, or he goes right over the ball. But you've seen TJ Hawkinson do that one where he kind of goes halfway across, kind of chops his feet and then goes back. And really, you're just trying to see if the linebackers are going to slide or if you can get a man zone indicator. But you have to make sure that there's a dummy count on that. And that dummy, if he's going all the way to the opposite guard and then back, your dummy count can't be too early or too late. It ruins the fake. A real snap count also can't be too early or late, especially if you've canned the run to the pass and you're only faking the jet sweep instead of getting it. Are you guys all still with me, by the way? Because this stuff's really easy to get down. He should have it down. No excuse to not have it down after having a year to memorize. Are you all still with me? Like, this is what we are talking about here. So we can maybe be a little bit graceful when one of these little details gets screwed up. But those details are the things that matter. Like what I was just talking about, the timing of the snap. This is something Wentz wasn't great at. McCarthy hasn't been great at. They just aren't ready to do that, right? So if you have somebody, let's say, doing fly motion across the formation, that's fly motion is the one that looks like a jet sweep. That snap needs to come right when he is past about the tackle so that it looks like he's going to get the jet sweep. But if that motion comes, if he's in front of the opposite side guard instead, then that jet sweep fake doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the play that Kyle Hamilton batted down. If you remember, when he beat Jordan Mason on the block and he batted it down because he didn't have to respect the jet sweep. He didn't get widened out the same way that he did. They actually ran that play twice. It worked once when Aaron Jones had a great pass block. You may remember that one. Fake to Aaron Jones and he blocks Kyle Hamilton and it turns into a good play. Well, that jet sweep motion, that fly motion, widened out Kyle Hamilton and put him in a nice spot for Aaron Jones to lay the smack on him. But if that fly motion, if the snap is late and therefore Kyle Hamilton's like, well, I know that guy's not getting the ball. He's already passed the ball and he can just come right down the line. Suddenly Jordan Mason is a much harder block to make. And some of that too is just Jordan Mason failing up the block and Aaron Jones getting it. You can just credit the guys. But when I say stuff like we're asking too much about the who and not about the what, the who is Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. The what, and like Aaron Jones has screwed up plenty of blocks in the past. Like, you don't think that he's a great blocker. You think he maybe won that one, good for him. But you don't think Aaron Jones is the great pass protection blocker in the world. No, the what is a slight timing error cascaded into a bigger problem that led to a batted pass. That's the stuff we need to look at. But if you just stop tagging the motions and stop trying to do stuff that relies on all this precision, just line up in shotgun, drop back, and do a pure progression read. McCarthy's best plays have come on that. He can get those routine ones, right? Like the one you're talking about that went to Adam Thielen that was dropped. Well, that was pretty well executed from a quarterbacking perspective, right? He doesn't need all this extra nonsense to manipulate the linebacker just a little bit and all this stuff. Just identify the coverage and do read simply rather than asking him to precisely time a dummy count, precisely time a snap count, the real snap count, precisely time a play fake, precisely time and space his drop back, and then precisely place the ball. That is so difficult physically to execute all that. That is miles and light years away from anything he did at Michigan, even though Michigan was a slightly pro-style offense. He wasn't doing all this circus nonsense. And all that crap takes time. And by the time you're actually set up to throw, you're 2 seconds into the play. So that's my deal with Kevin O'Connell's play calling. I have been calling it too complicated, and I really wanted to illustrate just how complicated things are, because here is the kicker for all of this, all that crap that I was saying that was unintelligible nonsense. That was a simple one.
Yeah, and it's some of those nuanced details that can matter significantly. And just this past weekend, we saw 8 false start penalties at home. The first time that had happened since 2009 when the Buffalo Bills had 9, and tied for second most since the turn of the century for a team having that many false starts at home. Those little details, it may not seem like a lot, and there are people in the chat, talking about, we're making it sound like too much for McCarthy. No, this is what every NFL quarterback is asked to do, and sometimes it's good to have that kind of context to where if you hear it, then you'd be like, okay, they're doing a ton at the line, because sometimes we don't think about it because we're used to playing Madden. We press a button, we press R2 so we can look at the coverage, and then we
and the
hit X
computer
to
makes
cut.
the guy do motion the same way every time. But sometimes Justin Jefferson's slower than Jordan Addison is on the motion. Sometimes Jalen Naylor does it, and he ran a little too hard because he's amped up because he just got a really good speech on the sideline. Or sometimes he's jogging it a little bit too much, and now he has to. This is another one. Like, okay, do you know what, like a rail route? So a rail route comes from fly motion and then turns into a go ball, right? Basically, it looks like a wheel, but you start in motion at the snap. If you run that too fast and you get to your spot and you slow down, you've lost all the momentum from that motion. The point of that is to give you a running start so you can get some speed going, and then it's really hard for a corner to keep up with you, right? But if the snap is late and you get to where you're supposed to start running that route, you have to stop and you lose the benefit of that motion. So like those little tiny nuances, you have to be within a fraction of a second of all of that and get all of those little things thought out about. Did we slide the linebacker right? Did the safeties roll the way? Should I Oscar this? All of that slows you down and bogs you down and gives you extra stuff to think about. And every little thing that you have to think about, every little thing that you have to execute is an opportunity for failure. And what we saw with this offense with Wentz was much simpler. You took all that tags and all that stuff out. You ran curl flat because he knows how to run it, and he's been here for 20 days. We got to just run curl flat. And it moved the ball a little bit better, didn't it? So what if we just did that, but with a quarterback that actually has a functioning body, and see how that goes? This is what I've been asking for since the Atlanta game, and we haven't seen it, and the offense has been one of the worst in the league.
I do think some of the static stuff that you talked about, where you just let McCarthy go through some of those progressions, and I think that makes a lot of sense in incorporating some of that. You don't need to have fancy stuff every single time. And we talk about it all the time on this show. If you are thinking, you are failing. You can't think once the ball is snapped. You have to just be able to go and react. Read and react. That's how you have to play football. If you're thinking, you are getting blown up or you are getting run past. You can't be doing some of those things. So simplifying the offense, I think, is really important. I want to talk about run pass splits. And I know I hate them. I think they're stupid. And I also think that balance is really important. But I want to use this opportunity to kind of clear some stuff up, because everything we've talked about when it comes to the idea of run pass splits and having true balance exists when the opponent is threatened by both the run and the pass. It does not matter how many times you do that. That's, to me, when you achieve perfect balance. But when people talk about Kevin O'Connell not calling run plays, I think this whole conversation has really been a beacon of light to where he is calling run plays. You just aren't seeing them because they're being canned. They're being changed at the line of scrimmage. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that of the 36 neutral script plays where the Vikings weren't dealing with clock or being down 2 scores, to where it wasn't 25 dropbacks and 11 rushes, or I'm not even going to say that it was completely 50-50, but you can see the amount of plays that get canned and how many of them end up being pass plays. You can reasonably assume that they're checking out of a decent amount of runs, and they're probably doing the same thing with passes. It's the idea of play calling is not a linear concept. It is a giant chess match. Every time they make a move or show you a coverage, your thinking changes. You have to change your end game strategy based on every single play, every single move. And it is not as simple as you just need to run the ball more. Because guess what? All of a sudden, you're running 1st and 10, 2nd and 9, and it's 3rd and 7. And we're talking about a Gary Kubiak offense under Mike Zimmer. That's what it boils down to. And I think some of the grace with Kevin O'Connell needs to be given. They need to be better on 3rd and short. A lot of that is execution. And I really like what Luke pointed out about talking about that fly sweep, because the precision, the timing, and asking them to be perfect on those plays to be able to threaten Kyle Hamilton so he doesn't just come straight on and get the PBU. those things matter to me with play calling more than just, oh, Kevin O'Connell just needs to run. Yeah, they need to run more. Like, they whipped ass in duo. Run duo. Just say, hey, go beat up the guy in front of you. Go have fun. Donovan Jackson loves to beat people up. You can tell by the way he likes to play football. And those things to me matter more than, oh, just call more running plays. And I think this whole
feels like the guy with flex tape. Like, more running plays, that'll fix it. Like, how you get to that running play is part of it too. I want to give you one more example of this. I know we're way late.
Please
on this,
do.
But
That's
so
no, this is good.
You guys remember the 4th and 5 near the end of the game that they did not convert down near the red zone? It was a sort of contested ball to Justin Jefferson, and he like couldn't fight through, and he didn't. You remember that one, right?
Yes.
So he canned into that, and if you look at what he's looking at when he cans into that, and the play that they end up in there, to me, is a horrible play call for that situation. It's 4th and 5, and every single route is going to the end zone, and there was no check down. That to me is just situationally 4th and 5 in the red zone, and it's only end zone shots. Is just horrible to be in. But that was the can. It was only the backup play. And so when you call a can like that, there will be a specific thing that you're looking for that causes you to can. For an easy example, if you got a big pass play called, but you see a big bubble in the B gap, you see an unguarded gap, they could call a run play that's supposed to go into that gap and say, hey, can to that if you see the opportunity, right? Or if you see one-on-one with Justin Jefferson and no safety, can to a go ball and forget the rest of the play and just can to that. This one it's obviously a lot more complicated than that, but like that's the idea, is that you're not just picking between the two plays. You're usually looking for a specific indicator that says that usually is going to foil the first play. If you have the pre-snap look that says, oh, the first play is not going to work, you will tag it as that's the can. You know, if you have a pass play that's called against too high and won't work against too high, you can do a run, so you can run into a light box. So on that 4th down, they can't. I don't know what they had called beforehand. We never will, only if you were in the room, right? But they had man indicators. I think there was a motion that somebody ran with, or like the way they were set up, it looked like man-to-man coverage. And as the Ravens often do, they had corners on the same level, which is why the Vikings tried all these switch releases. And the Ravens did a great job of, at the cadence, backing one of those corners off so they were no longer at the same level. They were no longer going to bump into each other. And then they could handle the switch release however they wanted to, and usually do so pretty smoothly. So McCarthy saw that man indicator, saw press defenders all 2 yards from the line of scrimmage, all at the same level, and canned into a switch release end zone shot play. That was basically smash in the end zone with a corner and an out on the goal line that would switch release and try to bump these guys into each other. That play, because it's end zone shots, had 7 in protection. So no checkdowns, no outlets. And the Ravens could then, they were in, I think, just 2. I think they were just in cover 2, if I recall. I'm going off the dome here. I went over it in my Patreon video.
I think you're right.
So all 5 underneath defenders, because you have no underneath routes, backed off to the sticks, and they were able to handle that high-low easily because all of your underneath defenders can come contribute because they don't have anything to do underneath. That, to me, only works if you can get those guys on the switch release, which the Vikings clearly thought they were going to do all day long, and they did not do all day long. The Ravens did way better than they expected, and I think that's a game plan error. That's losing the game on Tuesday. But isn't it interesting that J.J. McCarthy canned into that play, that he thought that would work? So we might have had a much more simple play call in, but McCarthy got greedy and thought, oh, I can throw a touchdown here. Can. How often is that happening? How often are we seeing can into something greedy and then blaming Kevin O'Connell for that play call when the first one was okay? But here's what I say. If you're Kevin O'Connell, take the can out. I don't think you need to have a can in every play call. And by the way, that'll make the play calls shorter and you can get out of the huddle faster. But right now, they're calling a 900-word Bible-length play call, getting to the line, doing a motion with a dummy count, then another motion to get an indicator. Then McCarthy has to process it, decide if he's going to can or not. If he's going to can or not, that can might have an extra motion on it. And everybody's got to get reset because they all have to go echo the call to each other, and then they have to get still again, wait for a second. All this stuff happens, and suddenly you're up against the play clock, and everybody's timing your snap because the play clock's at 0, and they know that you have to go. that has been a problem with this offense all year long, with Wentz, with McCarthy, all the way back to Chicago and Atlanta, and it hasn't changed. And to me, that quote that you mentioned about O'Connell it tells me that he does not believe it to be a problem. And it is a huge problem. And I think he is underestimating how much damage it's doing to the offense.
I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that I'll keep harping on is process over results. And if you have really good process, the results will come. And so far, the process is a little mixed, as you've kind of heard here. I don't really care that, the Vikings haven't completed one pass at 3rd and short with JJ McCarthy. Well, go look at my Twitter feed, go look at my pin tweet, and look at every 3rd and 4th and 1 or 2 yards, and go tell me what play calls needed to be changed, because the play calls are fine for the most part. And you can go look and see, hey, are they canning? How much of this is McCarthy? How much of this is O'Connell? It's a much more layered conversation than he just needs to run the ball more. And I'm glad we were able to have it. Before we go, Luke, because we just have a few more minutes, I want to ask you about Eric Wilson, because he's having a fantastic year. And without Jonathan Gennard, we could be seeing Eric Wilson doing a lot more of the edgy kind of stuff, which we saw a couple weeks ago. I believe it was the Eagles game where Dallas Turner only got in for like about 15-ish plays, but Eric Wilson was on for all but 8 of them. What are you seeing from Eric Wilson, and are they being really smart with how they're using him?
I don't know if I could call it smart. I think they are overthinking yet another thing. They are using Eric Wilson sometimes as a true blue edge rusher, like not like an overhang defender, not a blitzer, like he is the guy. So if I'm an opposing team and I see hold on, let me see Eric Wilson height, weight. I'm Googling it. I see 229 pounds on the edge, right? Number 55. Oh my God. I have a can every time I say, and by the way, can to zone at 55, because I am running at that dude every time we put him on there. Dallas Turner, for how light in the ass he can be sometimes, can set that edge and fold that tight end in, especially when it's strong side, right? When they put Eric Wilson on that strong side, you've seen some really good run plays come against the Vikings in that. So I don't think that alignment makes sense. And he's playing a lot of reps because when Dallas Turner does come in and play edge, Eric Wilson just plays off-ball linebacker. He doesn't come all the way off the field. So it's a package thing that they're doing when they want to make room for an extra DB. They're taking Dallas Turner off the field instead of Blake Cashman or Eric Wilson. So that's like, if I'm an opposing team, I am coming out in whatever package makes them do that one. And I am running zone at 55 all freaking day long, especially if I have a semi-physical tight end or a tackle I trust. Oh my God, I'm running zone at this guy all day long because he can get washed out. We've seen it all throughout his career. He is having a nice season as a blitzer, but from that edge production,
no.
Usually they can't really get him to do anything more than grunt work. He's not like, they've got him like trying to rip move Ronnie Stanley right now, rather than just be a blitzer, go beat a running back. He had a great game against the Lions, rushing primarily against Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs is a different challenge than if you got him up against next week like Darnell Wright. That's a different dude and a different pass rush challenge. But that's kind of what's happening right now. You wanted to talk about Dallas Turner, so I actually went and watched him, and I'm going to do a Patreon on him. But I got to say, there is not a lot to glean. It's like a lot of nothing burger reps, and there's not a lot of meat on the bone in terms of evaluation. That doesn't mean he played poorly or well. It just means that, a lot of them where the run went the other way and he didn't have a lot to do. So you can't really like learn anything about him. But what I will say is, every time I'm like, man, what's wrong with Dallas Turner? They benched him they'd rather have Eric Wilson there. They're taking him off the field. They don't want him anywhere. They didn't play him at all in the playoff game last year. What's wrong with him? Every time I look, it's just entirely inoffensive. It's like, well, I don't know. He did his job and it looked fine. And maybe he could have got a little more push on that rep, or there's a spin move that didn't work here or there. But it feels to me like they're just done with him. I don't know. It feels like I remember talking to Alec Lewis a couple years ago about Lewis Cine before they cut him, and he got the vibe that they were just done with Lewis Cine, that they had just kind of like thrown their hands up and they said, I don't know, he gets one more camp to see if he's gone off on his own and become a better player, but otherwise we're going to cut him, and that was the year he got cut. And it kind of feels like we're in that same place where like they just kind of, I don't know. I feel like this team has started to get a track record of with these young players that are coming out young and raw of just not developing them. And then if they're not really good right away, we just go, we're going to go with a veteran and just kind of let them rot in the rotational part. Because I feel like Dallas Turner had shown us quite a bit in terms, especially down the stretch last year, to be like an exciting developmental prospect. And they just are not putting him on the field, even though he's playing a lot better than he did last year.
Yeah, I thought it was especially odd that once Blake Cashman was back, they're playing Eric Wilson 90% of snaps. It's bonkers high level for a guy that you just gave $4 million to, and you expected to be your linebacker 3 and maybe rotate in for 15 to 20 a game. I found that to be really interesting, and there's still a lot to glean. I've been, after absolutely trashing the pick when they took Dallas Turner over Chop Robinson, which I know you were on board with initially. I've become his like biggest defender because I think people are just being super obtuse about what Dallas Turner is. But I'm excited to kind of see what this offseason process is, because I think they're going to go for hard for an off-ball linebacker to pair with Blake Cashman, because they want to have two guys who can do a bunch of different things. That's my
Eric Wilson's probably not the future of the franchise. Even if you think he's a really great player right now, he's on the wrong side of 30. So
he's a good story, and that's it. We're going to wrap up here quick. Bring in producer Dave. Before we do, anything you have for us real quick before we get Luke out of here? Because I know he's got an obligation here tonight.
I told him that I needed a couple more minutes. It's fine if you want to keep going.
Hey, it's been a great show tonight. I appreciate all of this. There, Luke and Tyler, you guys have been absolutely fantastic about getting into the details of how all this works.
And I think the details matter when we're having these conversations, because it's not just as simple as, hey, they just need to run the ball more. I mean, there's some of that too. Obviously, we'd both like to see them run the ball more, but there's so many layers and intricacies to this entire discussion, and I'm glad we were able to kind of talk about it and expose people to it, because nobody else is going to talk about this stuff like we will. Maybe a Reef when he goes on his 15-minute Norse code monologue tomorrow night, will. But other than that, this is going to be the only spot where you're going to get this kind of discussion, because it's very
nobody's
important.
reading off playbooks to you this week, but us here on First and SKOL.
Absolutely. And you're going to get a lot more of that on Locked On Vikings and Luke Braun's Patreon, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Thank you very much, sir. This was our best show yet. I'm very proud of what we're doing here.
It's been good. Hey, I've appreciated it. Now, Luke, you talked about how JJ seems to regress in his calmness. He sits there and everybody knows he does the woosah stuff before the game. And he comes out in that first drive and he's all calm and collected. And then everything seems to ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
Does he need to channel his inner Chuck Yeager? And you guys are too young to know what I mean by Chuck Yeager. Colonel Chuck Yeager at the time was a test pilot, put an F-104 in a flat spin, should have died, was well over 100,000 feet and falling. The airplane was spinning, and he sat there, and over the intercom, he said, everything's good. Everything's calm. The right ring is about to fall off, but I'm good. And he literally set the standards for pilots from there on out. I think J.J. McCarthy, football's an emotional sport. I got that. But he needs to channel that sort of Zen moment throughout the game, and then we'll find that we have a very, very good quarterback.
Well, that last part remains to be seen, but I think I agree. You got to find that. Cousins would talk about this sometimes, about bouncing back from interceptions and stuff. And about, you can only do the play in front of you. You get a lot of really great quotes about this kind of mentality from players after the 33-0 comeback a few years ago. where they kind of had this great approach to it of just do the next play. You can't do all 9 plays on this drive that you need, and you can't score all 5 touchdowns in one. Just do the next play. Just do the next play. Just do the next play. And that can keep you calm. But staying calm when the bullets are flying, I mean, that's sports, man. That's what everybody needs to do.
Absolutely. But it's been a great show. Thanks.
Yeah, it has been a great show. Tomorrow night, 6:05 Central Time, I will have Taylor Dahl, host of Making Monsters for Windy City Gridiron, and she also hosts Helmets and Heels radio show down in Jacksonville. We're going to talk Vikings Bears tomorrow night, and make sure you go check out the Locked On crossover before that, as Luke has Lauren Cox on his show. Talk Vikings Bears, always a fun discussion with those two. Luke, anything else you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. 2 hours of JJ McCarthy. I went over 37 plays. He dropped back 42 times, and I went over 37 plays. One of them is a run play, so 36 of his 42 dropbacks, and a run play that was a pre-snap read. But check that out. And then I also went over all of the 8 false starts on that Patreon page too. So if you're like, why did those false starts happen? What happened? I went over more playbook reading about what's the like what Oscar is and what the cans are and how the dummy counts work and all the snap counts are supposed to be, and why the Vikings messed all that up each singular time, and which one of them was just disciplining. A guy jumped at you and you flinched. Which one of it was we genuinely had confusion in the huddle and the quarterback has to do a better job of communicating. Like I say with a lot of these, each play is going to be its own answer, and each false start is going to be its own answer. It's not that they were all poorly communicated snap counts. Sometimes Justin Jefferson just lost focus. So you got to take each one as its own thing and then put them together at the end.
Exactly. Make sure you go check all that out. We'll see you tomorrow night at 6:05, and make sure you go join the Vikings First and SKOL Discord. Dave's got a link there for the Who Will Be King show from earlier today. Otherwise, you'll hear it later on your podcast feed. I'm Tyler for Luke and Dave. Thank you very much. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and share this episode with your friends and even your enemies. We'd love it. Thanks for watching Vikings First and SKOL. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network, and we appreciate each and every one of you. SKOL.